Well, it's certainly a pleasure to be here and to participate in a conversation around the role of men in parenting. Um, it's almost like I need to put my clinical side apart because, I was taught around this idea that if you see challenges or mistakes, then our job is to step in and fix it. And I think as parents, we sometimes take on that mantle, especially men. We want our children to do well, but we have a tendency to focus on managing behavior. And so what I'd like to just chat a little bit about some key things that I've learned, not only from my own role as a parent. I now have a son that's 20 and 22, and they're now emerging adults, now starting to reflect a lot of the things that we tried to focus on and build into their lives. And one of the key concepts that I think as men, we need to understand that, we prepare our children for life by how we build into their lives. And it's an inside out process. It's not an outside in. It's not about managing or making sure our children do things right all the time or behave a certain way. It's about developing, helping them to develop a sense of who they are, a sense of empowerment, and values and principles that they make their decisions by, and a belief in their potential to do great things. Now, what that's going to look like, I don't know. Even now with my two boys, I find it challenging in the sense that I'd like to see them go down a certain path, but it's a path that they have to choose career-wise or even relationship-wise. And so I've moved away more from that earlier years of maybe being a teacher to a mentor coach. And so now I'm that sounding board that is that safe relationship that they can come and talk. So there's a couple of things I paid attention to, and I wished I would have learned sooner than later. But one of the key concepts that as men, I think we need to see our children, whether they're boys or girls, because this also really applies to women as well. But I think males have a different relationship oftentimes. My boys will actually learn about how to connect with women in their life, oftentimes through the relationship with their mother. Whereas a lot of some of the other learnings they need in life come through the relationship of the father. And it's not saying that they can't learn that from either one, but there is something about what does it mean to be a male in our society or a woman in our society. And sometimes that sounding board or that place of figuring that out is in the relationship with either parent. And there's different learning sometimes that occur. But one of the things I saw in my work with my children was the idea that I needed to see them at potential and not at risk. Because when you see them at risk, you tend to interact with them a certain way. We tend to sort of demand certain things from them, or we watch their behavior. Whereas if we see them at potential, we're asking different questions. So for example, I could say to my child, why did you do that? Didn't we talk about that the other day? Didn't we say that we were going to change? Well, that's a judgment statement. And what comes across to the child is I messed up. And if I don't behave a certain way, then I'm not acceptable to you. As opposed to, that was an interesting choice. Well, why was it important to you? I'm looking at asking in a curious way, what's going on behind here? Because it sounds like you were meeting a need and you chose a certain way of doing it. Could you help me to understand the need that you're trying to meet? Because maybe we could explore different ways of meeting that need. And in doing that, you're not robbing the child of his empowerment. You're saying, no, it's normal to have needs. It's normal to be interacting a certain way, but how you choose and how you adapt is important. And so therefore you're guiding them and coaching them on that process of weighing the pros and cons of things. And so they're starting to develop that internal template that they need to learn how to adapt. They need to learn how to explore, but the types of choices they make have an impact on their lives. Another concept that I found as a father is that my job is not to smooth out my child's path. It's actually to prepare them for the path that they have to walk. And so part of that was, we live in a society where we oftentimes think that our children shouldn't experience stress or they shouldn't experience challenges. And we have a funny saying in our family, my two boys know exactly what I'm talking about because I started this fairly early in their early teens. My job is not to make your life easy for you. My job is to mess your life up. And so I don't mean that in a negative way, but what I mean is that my job is to introduce you outside your comfort zone. I don't want you to sort of say, you know, life is good because I've never had to make a tough challenge. We see that actually in a lot of kids going off to college and university. We have a 30% dropout rate in university of our kids because they don't know how to handle life. So part of this job as a parent, and especially as a father, is my job is to prepare you for life. And that means allowing you to experience certain things, as long as it's not risk oriented or whatever. But point is that I need to allow you to experience. We'll work through it in our relationship because I've established trust and a sense of safety for you to talk about things. But you need to step out of your comfort zone, because that's where you really learn about who you are as a person, and that your role is to sort of embrace your own story forward, not mine. And that's a tendency we might have as fathers, is we want our children to experience things that we did. And if we experience negative things, we want to protect our children from that. And that may not be always the best decision. Another thing that I learned about is that when I'm raising my children, we have a tendency to challenge behavior a lot. And one of the concepts that I learned is, if you want your children to learn about what it means to make good choices or to behave in a way that's productive and constructive and to be resilient, is point out to them when they're actually doing those things, not because you said, we're going to learn this, therefore a good job, you did it, but actually in the day as you're watching them. You know, if your child picks up a dishcloth and helps mom dry the dishes, point it out to them. Thanks for doing that. That's what it means to be a contributing member to our family. And that's how we appreciate mom. So you're looking for those teachable moments where you actually identify the behavior you're looking for, highlight it, affirm your child for that. And what you find is that then children start to get a sense of, oh, that's what you mean, dad, or that's what you mean, mom. And therefore they tend to want to replicate it again, because the greatest gift you have with your children is that relationship. And if you can keep affirming that relationship in ways where the child feels honored to be in that relationship and wants that relationship, research actually shows us that kids will actually do amazingly well as they enter into their early adulthood 95% of the time, if they've got a relationship in their life, whether it's a parent or a mother or father, that they see as, you've been cheerleading me, but you affirm me, you don't judge me. The other is, sometimes we get into wanting something for our children, and I think you have to learn the art of rewriting your negative scripts. Sometimes we talk a certain way to our children and it's not changing the dial. And so it's actually not the child's position to change. And as fathers, we need to learn the art of saying, you know something, I don't think I've been communicating well, or I don't think we're talking about the same thing. So I need to take a step back. I need to listen to your story, and I need to re-enter into that conversation in a different way. So it's about us being proactive oftentimes around how we engage our children and moving that conversation forward. Another one is I learned the art that I need to choose my battles. Sometimes we focus on the things that really don't matter, as opposed to the really important conversations. And therefore, you know, learn to put your energy. And if you do challenge your children, it's not because you're saying, I reject you as my son or daughter. It's because I care about you and I want to have an honest discussion about this. What are your thoughts about this? So learn the art of listening to understand instead of listening to direct. So oftentimes our children do have a perspective of what's going on. It's just they need the freedom to be able to talk about it and not feel like they're going to be put down, because what they're feeling is real. And therefore you need to validate those feelings. So that concept of empathy as opposed to pity or judgment. So that kind of ties to just good communication. You know, the idea of putting time aside on a regular basis, that your children know that they have time with you. It's a father-daughter or father-son, and it's predictable. It gives them a place to say, this is what happened this week. Or it's just, we're just being present with each other. They need to know that you have them as a priority and that you will put that time aside. The other part of the journey with the kids, our children, is make sure you're introducing them into social situations where they're developing a sense of conscience, altruism, or community responsibility. This idea of going to the Salvation Army house once a year doesn't cut it. It's about how do you invite your children into situations on a regular basis with you and so that they have an opportunity to ask questions when they see things that go beyond their emotional capacity. And I remember my son, my youngest son, just has an amazing heart for helping people. But sometimes when he gets in situations where it goes beyond his emotional capacity, he was afraid of it. And he needed somebody there with him, especially me as a father, to be the sounding board to say, yes, there is pain, there's troubles, there's challenges in this world, but you can be part of the solution. And one of the the outcomes of that for my youngest son is he went to the Philippines for a year and was working in very impoverished communities and prison systems down there, just helping out. So that was that was kind of an outcome of this journey of introducing him to situations where he felt the pain of others, but then was learning how to respond to it. And so the other part I think we need to work with our children around is that making sure they understand that they're on a journey and that you're there to support them to explore their own potential. Sometimes we have a tendency to say, this is what I think you should do, or this is what, would be a safe job, or this is what would be. So we and it's not wrong to have those opinions, but just remember that they have their own sense of experience, their own mindset, their own sense of who they are. And that oftentimes what you need to focus on is their sparks, not what you think they should be. So this is an interesting concept, but we need to accept our children for who they are, not what we think they should be. And this is that idea of giving them permission to explore their passions, because you're going to find that their educational journey or their career journey is oftentimes going to come out of what creates a spark inside of them, what puts a smile on their heart. And that's where they're going to start moving towards, how do I prepare for whatever it might be, but that's the zone of life that I need to be in, because that's where I'm going to enjoy. That's where I'm going to be motivated. That's where I'm going to be impactful or transformative, because it aligns with who I am. And sometimes that goes in directions we never thought of. I'm still, waiting for my two boys to sort of figure some of that out as they move forward. But I'm excited because it's kind of moving out of my comfort zone. And that's what I've been asking them to do all along in our parenting journey. So it is a two-way street. It's as fathers, we're in a journey ourselves, but we need to be more of a coach facilitator as opposed to a director. We played a bit of that role in the early years, but as the kids start developing a sense of who they are, they need to take ownership of their own journey forward. And it's a blessing. It's exciting. My two boys are going to impact the world in ways I never thought possible. I'm just looking forward to seeing how that happens.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I don't know about anybody else, but when Dr. Wayne gets going, I just, it's like a fire hose being just bursted out at you. I'm wondering if there's any questions, because we have a few more moments, but so if you have any questions, please write them in the chat. But I really like what you've said here, Dr. Wayne, about, just really acknowledging sometimes we have to grieve what we wanted our kids to be in comparison to what they maybe are. And not talking about behaviors or destruction or conduct disorder, but talking about, their personalities and what they love. And I just wonder, if you could maybe dive into that, like how does a dad overcome that? Because it's really hard to overcome our own expectations. That's a brave battle.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's sort of a bit of a stereotype society that as fathers, we should have our act together and we should, be in a good position to guide our children forward. I know for me, part of that journey was having other men in my life who were fathers or grandfathers, who were the safe sounding board that I needed to talk to about where I was at in my journey. There's definitely days when, my kids are making decisions that, wow, where did that come from? That wasn't part of the legacy I was hoping for. But that's, again, that's, as fathers, we need to learn the art of stepping out of our comfort zone, being vulnerable. We don't have ultimate control over these amazing potential individuals. At some point, we have to let them go. um, and sort of say, you know, we've been building into your life. You're now ready. Now you have to experience it. Now, I think our children need to learn the art of making mistakes and learning from them. It's what they do with their mistakes that defines who they are, not the fact that they made mistakes. And we need to be there just to encourage them when they're exploring, I made a mistake, but what are my options? And moving forward. So, you know, both my boys know that as my sons, that's a non-negotiable. You will always be my son. Don't always understand some of the choices you make. Sometimes I wonder where that's going, but you need to know that you're my son. That never changes. And, you know, I need to allow you to experience life because that's how you're going to figure it out, not by me protecting you or telling you what you should do. And that's actually, to me, as I reach into some of my, where I'm at age-wise, is that it's a freeing feeling to know that my children are ready to make those choices and learn from them. You know, they're in my prayers every morning that today will be a day that they will realize their greatness. Because once kids start to wire their brain in ways that they know how to create success, they never let it go. They actually become empowered. And that's the maturity process that they're going through. And you know, it's yeah, as a father, it's time for me to take a step back and give them permission to figure that out.
Wow. That's a great prayer to pray every morning. I love that. Dr. Wayne, you have two questions here. The first one is someone's asking, you had mentioned introduce your kids to situations of blank and then altruism and then blank, and they're asking, what were those again?
Well, I think what we want is our children to understand that they have a social responsibility in society, not only in their relationship with others and how they treat them, but also this larger community that we live in, that they're important to be active participants in concepts of social justice or in concepts of caring for those who may have needs. Because I think one of the challenges of our society is that we've become very individualistic. We've become sort of RSP oriented. We're looking after our own little nest egg and sort of focusing on that. And, you know, part of what I want my boys to understand that if they see somebody who may need help or there's an injustice occurring or, and I hate to use the term racism or discrimination, that they will be the first to step up and address it on behalf of others or with others, because that's the fabric of our society. And so if I want my children to experience success, it's not materialism or focusing on power or concepts like that. It's about how do I interact with this larger society that reflects my inner values, what it means to be a person of greatness. And I don't use that term greatness in an egocentric way. It just means that they are resilient and they know how to create performance success in their lives, but it's based on certain character values that they're developing inside.
Wow, yes, that's incredible, incredible. And then the second question, Dr. Wayne, is what do your predictable times of being available and present as a parent look like?
Well, yeah, like it's kind of a combination of prescribed events, like, you know, making sure that you got one-on-one times with my kids. Actually, what I have found is not the, let's sit down for an hour, I'm going to ask you 3 questions and we're going to get some parenting done. I oftentimes find that it's going out and doing things, oftentimes some things that your children like, but also things that you like that you're sharing with them. But it's in your going, it's in the activity that my sons actually start asking questions. And I've had actually some of my best conversations with my boys, you know, not a prescribed time, but at 1 o'clock in the morning when we both make pancakes and talk about things that are going on. And it's just questions of, how are you doing, son? You know, and then because of the environment, because of whatever, they'll talk. And now the other is that it's sort of in your going. You know, I'm constantly affirming my children 3 to 4 times more often than any time I ever challenge them. And because it's my children need to know that I'm watching them. that I'm actually noticing the things that I value in how they're developing who they are, and telling them that. Um, you know, like it was really interesting. I went through. I had a heart attack back on Mother's Day. It was so really unexpected because I'm in fairly good shape and understanding, but it's a historical, hereditary thing. And during those 2 months after, my son, my oldest son, probably played the most critical role in my life of almost reflecting what I was doing with him. He would take those moments and say, Dad, you're doing okay. I'm helping you with your rehab. We're doing these kind of things. So he kind of almost took over the role that I had as a parent and how he was helping me. Now, that to me was something that I needed to notice, because I said, son, that's amazing. I'm excited about who you are and the fact that you were stepping up like that. And this is the impact it had on my life. And thank you. So it's really interesting to see how when you build into your children's lives, eventually they start reflecting it and they start giving back. And that's the amazing cycle, I think, of fatherhood, because it's almost like that circle of life concept that you spend all this time building in, but then your legacy is starting to almost demonstrate itself in real time.
Wow. Well, this has been so enriching. I mean, what a start to our morning. Dr. Wayne, you're an incredible man. I know that you know, here at Wellness Innovate with Abe and I, we love working with you, and you just, every time you open your mouth, the reason why it has so much weight to it is because you live it. And I think that you hit the nail on the head. It's not what we're telling our kids. It's not what we're telling our boys. It's what we're living with them. And I think that you just model that so greatly. I just want to honor you and tell you how much I love and respect you. And I'm just so thankful that you gave us your time this morning.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I noticed somebody was wanting about a document. It's not so much written for fathers, but I did write a document on strength-based parenting. If somebody wants to get a copy of it, I'm more than willing to share that. It's and so I can send that to you, Connie. And
That would be great. Yeah,
yeah,
that would be great.
it's also
Awesome.
a pleasure to be amongst a group of men and women. But you know, it's sometimes as a parent, it can feel lonely. Uh, you just need to know that there's other parents out there asking the same questions. And it's not because one person has the whole act together, because man alive, I can tell you about all the amazing mistakes I made. That could be a book in and of itself, as opposed to, but I think, you know, as we share our journeys, we share our conversations, we support each other. And I think that's what I'm looking for in parenting, is that we do it as a community, that it does take a village to raise a child. And as parents, we have a specific role. And as men, we have a specific role, but we do it in collaboration. And, you know, this is about, you know, transforming the next generation, because they're dealing with a lot in very different ways than what we had to.